Welcome everybody to Old Trafford for the Gary Neville podcast in the aftermath of a football match which has finished Manchester United 0, Tottenham 3. Gary, I barely need to ask you a question. How are you feeling off the back of that?
Yeah, I mean, I've used all the words during commentary, really. Atrocious from United, abysmal. I take it you want to hear about United first. It was a disgusting performance. I think that's the word I used at the end. But do you know something? All my words that I've used, you may see headlines around them. Neville calls Manchester United disgusting. When I think back to Christian Eriksen's comments after the game on Wednesday night, from someone who's in the dressing room, from someone who's a very senior player who should be trusted and has had a long, successful career, when he says that they didn't want it and they don't want it as much as another team in a game of football, that matters more than anything that anybody else can say, because he's inside there. He's seeing with his own eyes. Now, we know what's happening in there can't be great, because obviously it transmits out onto the pitch on a Saturday. That old adage of what you do in training, what you do every day in your lives, comes out here on a Saturday or a Sunday is very true. That's why when you hear people talk about sort of the Sir Alex Ferguson era, and you say that training was at 100% intensity every single minute of every day, preparation, the detail of everything you eat, everything you do in your sleep, everything you do with what you drink and hydration, the detail of everything's got to be absolutely perfect. And then you might see something on a Saturday. There's no doubt that something's going wrong in that United dressing room, because that today, I mean, look, they've not been great this season. They've been inconsistent and they've been up and down. They've only won 2 matches. They've lost 2. They've drawn 1. But last week at Palace in the first half, there was something. There was a bit of decent football. Now, they didn't score, and you can say, OK, they're not, hitting the net at this moment in time. But what we saw in the first half today, honestly, it was the worst. It was the worst that we've seen under Erik ten Hag. And the thing was, for me, I look, just rather than just talking words and phrases and say how bad it was, Van de Ven and Romero are on the ball in the first minute of the match, and Xerxes and Fernandez are sat back in sort of like what you'd call now, they call a mid-block position, which is basically the team are split probably 15, 20 yards side, this side of the halfway line, and 15, 20 yards the other side of the halfway line. So you've almost got like a mid-position on the pitch. But I just started to think, well, they're just letting them control the game. They're letting them settle into the game. And there is no trigger for when you actually press. Normally a trigger for a press is that there is a player in the back four of the opposition that is weaker on the ball, that you say, right, OK, we're going to go when he gets it. Or we're going to go when it goes to the right-hand side, to the right back, because they're weaker on that side, and we're going to make them force them to play. I couldn't quite work out how United thought they were going to win the ball back. So then you say, OK, they're not going to press, no problem. They're going to wait. But the problem was when Tottenham then played the ball into midfield, there was no real urgency to get about Kulusevski, Maddison and the others in midfield. So then you're thinking, well, what is the tactic from a defensive point of view? I know you've got back into a mid-press, but it's as if the players then don't know when to trigger a press of the centre-backs, or a press into a wide area, or what should happen is when that ball goes into that compact shape of Manchester United's 4-4-2 when they're defending with Xerxes and Fernandez, there should be like landmines going off. Everyone should be just round the ball and you should be at it. So we used to say sometimes you can sit back, but once it goes past your centre forwards, you've got to be aggressive. And there was none of that. So that's just me analysing from a defensive perspective. And Van de Ven just walked through them for that first goal. We'll come on to Tottenham in a minute and how good they were. And then you think from playing from the back, the very first time Manchester United try and play from the back, they try and play out through Onana, through Martinez and De Ligt, and they get caught. And actually, I think that leads to the goal in the end, where they get caught. So, just to me, and I'm not harping back 20 years, and I'm not harping back to other teams that play football, but the principles of when you play at home is that we've got to start quickly and with authority. We've got to make sure the crowd know that we're up for it. We've got to send a message to the opposition that this game's going to be tough. And I thought this would be a good day for Manchester United. How naive I was. And I think United fans that I spoke to on the way to the game, I saw hundreds of them over there. And basically, I'm talking to them and thinking, yeah, I fancy us today. Spurs feel like the right team to play. They give you a chance. They play a high line. Son's not playing. So all of a sudden, you're just thinking, well, hang on a minute, this could be a moment today to transform the season. And Peter, that was a nothing. That was really a nothing. And my heart sinks. Because, I mean, you said it at the end, and, you're less emotional about Manchester United than I am, but you can't kid football fans, you can't kid commentators, you can't kid co-commentators, you can't kid coaches or anybody watching at home on their sofas. That was a shocking day all round in terms of idea, in terms of plan, in terms of effort, in terms of everything. And the first half was awful. And I don't know where they go from there, because you've got to try, I'm sorry to turn this down, you've got to try and lift a team from that. And that is the depths of a performance, that. And don't get me wrong, I played in games sometimes where we lost 5-0 at United, up at Newcastle, or lost 6-3 at Southampton. So I've played in games where we've lost, but I don't think we've ever lost with that type of lethargic attitude, that type of approach. And I said at the end of the game, we've seen it now over 10 to 12 years. The Manchester United fans were very quiet in that first half. Second half, they tried to get the players going a little bit. But in that first half, when the game was there, I think they were absolutely dumbfounded by what they were watching. It was a really bad day. And a bad day for Erik ten Hag, because we all know the manager, he's the one that takes the questions, he takes the heat. He was under pressure at the end of last season. I think that Ineos took their time. They flirted, obviously, with other managers and thought about changing, but then decided they couldn't get the manager that they wanted, and that Ten Hag, with a structure around him, with some support, could be one that could take the club forward. Because this is a good coach. He's proven he's a good coach. But we're asking the question again, why is a good coach come to Manchester United and not being able to connect with the players, with a system, with an identity? And the fans are probably walking away tonight thinking, our manager's going to be in a bit of trouble here again. And none of us want that. No Manchester United fan wants that. We don't want our manager to be in trouble. You know, we're human, and I'm the same for every manager. I've never asked for a manager to be sacked, and never will do on Sky Sports in 12 years. But what you have to say is that will bring an absolute incredible amount of pressure upon him. And we would have been saying the same thing about Ange Postecoglou if Spurs had been beaten in the same way today. And we'll come on to Spurs. I don't keep saying I'll come on to Spurs, because I do want to talk about Spurs, because I'm really happy for Ange Postecoglou and the Spurs team today, because they were under pressure before that game. Ange Postecoglou's been asked a lot of questions in the last few weeks, and they played really, really well, and they deserve to win. But the headlines will be about Manchester United and their manager in this next 24, 40 hours. We know how this goes.
So having broken it down in terms of what Manchester United perhaps should have done and failed to do, is it your impression that the plan was wrong, or that the players failed to execute the plan?
Well, both, because to be fair, the players' urgency. What I can comment on, the players aren't either buying into the plan or don't know how to implement the plan. That's a fact, because we've seen it. But what I can comment on is the urgency of the players and the application of the players. I'm very qualified to do that, and you are as well. We know what crap looks like in terms of effort, and that's what we saw. Walking around the pitch, no urgency, no energy. They look drained of confidence as well, and belief. And that sometimes can transmit to application and lethargy and energy and questioning their attitudes. I don't believe, and I've said this before, there isn't a football player in this country that goes out onto the football pitch that wants to play badly, that wants to not work hard, that wants to not win, because at the end of the game, they're getting criticised and they're having to play in very difficult circumstances. I don't believe it ever happens. But through the last 10, 12 years, there has been a pattern at the end of managers' reigns where we've seen this almost like this complete and utter pressure drain on the players, where they look like they don't care. And I don't believe that. I think these players care. They've had good careers, a lot of them. But I'll go back to Eriksen's comments on Wednesday night. He's your teammate, lads. He's not my teammate. Not your teammate. We work for Sky Sports now. But he, senior player in the dressing room, has said you don't fancy it. Christian Eriksen, not a kid that's a bit emotional, that might have said the wrong words in an interview. Someone who's decided that after a game, having played hundreds and hundreds of games at the highest level, that he's going to walk into an interview and question the work ethic of his teammates. So you might be upset with what pundits are saying tonight, or what fans are saying, and what social media is saying. Your own teammates saying it, and you've got nowhere to go, and that is a real problem. So that's my comment on the players. In terms of the manager, it's been a constant question for 2.5 years, where we've talked about the identity, the plan, the consistency, the patterns of play. What are we seeing? What are we working towards? How are we progressing? I don't care if Manchester United don't win football matches all the time. I genuinely don't. I know at some point in the future that Manchester United will have their day again. But at this moment in time, Liverpool are doing really well over the last few years, and City have done brilliantly well, and Arsenal have done brilliantly well. They're great football clubs who will always do well at certain times in history, and Manchester United will have to have a dip. That's fine by me. My whole childhood was spent without a Premier League title or a League One title, Division One title. But what we have to see is an idea that the club are progressing and that they're moving in the right direction. There's been 1.4 billion pounds spent in the last 10, 12 years. And I can't just blame Erik ten Hag, because other managers before him that have had great reputations have come here and found it to be very difficult and a graveyard for them. And Erik ten Hag's finding the same problems are occurring, and that's with a new structure in place. Now, that new structure is only in place for the last few months, so I don't think you can turn towards them and say, you've not done the job yet. You've got to give them 2 or 3 years to be able to bed in. There are a lot of changes going on behind the scenes at Manchester United. There is a lot of transformation on and off the pitch that is occurring, and with that will come pain, and this is the pain that we're seeing right now. So that's just fact. But what they would have hoped for is that they would have given Erik ten Hag the support in the transfer market. They would have hoped that they would have given Erik ten Hag the confidence to give him a new contract, and that he would give them some air cover, and they would provide some air cover for him for the next 12 to 18 months while they implement their systems and their processes beneath. Dan Ashworth did something similar at the FA when we were in there with Roy Hodgson, who'd been appointed by the previous sort of hierarchy at the FA. And he came in and he brought people in, he embedded things in, and eventually, he got success in some ways with what happened with Gareth and getting to the finals in tournaments. But they're going to get asked the question now pretty quickly, I think, in the next couple of months. I was of the opinion that Erik ten Hag will be judged next, I think, in December. Get through a couple of months of October and November where he's got all the players available. Ugati's fully fit, De Ligt's back in, the back four are together. There's only Luke Shaw missing today, really, that you would have said were guaranteed to get into that first 11. So everyone's available, really, and you're always going to miss someone. Spurs had Son missing. Manchester City have got no Rodri. You can't whinge. The excuses stop. And I have to say that, Ineos are going to be challenged in this next month or two to be able to look at, they don't want to sack a manager, and absolutely don't want to sack a manager, but they have to find a way to support Erik ten Hag, and Erik ten Hag has to find a way to get hold of the players and swing this back in his favour very quickly, because it's tough from this day today. This day is a bad day.
So time for Tottenham. For Tottenham, yeah. A really, really good day. I mean, weren't they good? Aren't they a good watch?
Brilliant. I love watching them. I've loved Ange Postecoglou since he come to England. Obviously, he's had a little bit of a rough patch the end of last season and the start of this one. It's not been as good as he would like. But do you know something? I said it just very last comments of the game was that he's a massive asset to the Premier League. The style of football, his personality, the way in which they play. He hasn't had the backing of some of the other managers at the top clubs in Europe. He's been backed, but not to the level of the other top clubs. And I have to say that they always are a good watch. And that's something to be proud of, I have to be honest with you. And today, not just a good watch, but they've won this game, they've dominated this game, and they absolutely deserved it. And there are many times over this last 10, 12 years where I've, been punchy towards Spurs when I don't feel as though they've been, if you like, as strong enough or as good enough. And at the end of this game today, if United had won 3-0, we'd have been very dismissive of Tottenham and Ange Postecoglou, and he'd have had some difficult questions, and they would have been poking him in that press conference right now. However, it was a brilliant day for them. I thought the first goal was spectacular. I thought that run from Van der Ven was, not many things in a football match surprise you because you've seen most of it before, but I don't think I've ever seen a run like that from a centre-back from 60 yards away, driving through the whole pitch. It's almost like Ryan Giggs at one point at sort of that goal that he scored in the 99 semi-final. Obviously, he went a bit further and then crossed it. But even the cross at the end was absolutely brilliant. And I actually said brilliant as he actually went past. I don't know if he went past in the end. It was a brilliant, brilliant run. The way in which he strides forward is absolutely brilliant. And they've got the bones of a good team, Spurs. But they're just a little bit light just because they haven't got the squad and the sort of depth of everybody else. And yet, they play today. Joseph, it's interesting. I got this sheet. You get this sheet, don't you? Yeah. And it's interesting sometimes. You just think today, I'm confident about Manchester United. I think I said it to you, actually, in the truck. I looked at the Tottenham team from last week, and I looked at the Manchester United team that played at Palace, and I thought, Tottenham's team is better. I just said it before the game. And you sometimes, it's a simple thing. Do you know what I mean? When you just think about, today, Man United, I think are going to win. And I think that, I'm a United fan. But then I looked at the teams that played last week in the respective Premier League fixtures and thought, Tottenham's team, I actually would prefer that than the United one that played at Palace. And that's a worry. £650 million in. Ange Postecoglou's had nothing like that to spend. But they've got a good team. And that's without their best player today.
So Spurs fans will be loving this.
Yeah, absolutely should do.
And absolutely should do. But they also know that for years, for decades, theirs is a club, rightly or wrongly, with a reputation for false dawns. Here it goes for Tottenham and it doesn't quite, or whatever. So many times it's happened. So what would you suggest in all seriousness to Spurs fans that they should anticipate in terms of being involved in the big conversation?
Well, look, Spurs have been it's chronic underachievement over decades on the pitch for the size of the club that they are. And for the last 4 or 5 years, the football that Spurs were playing before Ange Postecoglou came, it was a bit dour. It wasn't really what I expect. At least now I'm watching football that's something like. It's really good, really high level. And yeah, they sometimes make mistakes. Sometimes they sort of give you a chance. But they're thrilling. And that's, to me, a really important part of football. And look, Ange Postecoglou's been asked a few times over the last few, since that interview where he said, I always win a trophy in my second season. I don't think anybody, other than probably Arsenal fans, for me as a United fan, obviously I want United to win trophies, but I want Newcastle to win a trophy. I want Everton to win a trophy. I want Tottenham to win a trophy. I do want those clubs to win trophies if my team doesn't win a trophy, because I want them to be, when West Ham won the Conference League a couple of years ago, it was fantastic that you see a different team winning trophies. When Leicester win the Premier League, probably the greatest story of all time. So this season, look, Ange Postecoglou has promised the Spurs fans a trophy, and that's going to likely be obviously a cup competition. They're in 3 cups, and who would begrudge him doing it with the style of football? Every time I go to watch a Spurs game, you get those fixtures sent out to you, don't you, by email at the start of sort of like this month for the next month. And you think, right, who have I got? And, you're never disappointed if you go into Tottenham Stadium because right, I'm going to watch a good game. I'm going to watch them play the right way. And even today, I was coming here thinking, we're going to get a really good game today. And, the game, obviously, with the sending, we've not mentioned the sending off, have we? We probably should talk about it. But, I suppose, usually, ordinarily, you'd make excuses, wouldn't you, if your team went down to 10 men and you thought the sending off was a little bit harsh. But it was that bad before the sending off. That's why I concentrated on it. But, yeah, for Spurs today, I thought they were good. And, I hope they have a good season.
Time's running out, so quickly on the sending off, what is your view?
Look, to be honest with you, I think there were 2 things that I thought, and you said it to me at half-time, I thought it was a red card straight away. Because, do you know the reaction of the Spurs players? Sometimes when players are reacting, they look really alarmed by the challenge. I thought, that was a really, sort of 4 or 5 of them that were around it, all really sort of like boisterously going towards the referee. So I thought something's happened here. And then I don't think the Spurs players have recognised that Fernandes has slipped. We didn't recognise that Fernandes has slipped until we watched it on the replay. And I'm not sure the referee recognised that there was a slip and then just a little bit of a desperate lunge. I think that, like the Spurs players thought, that actually the referee thought that it was a very cynical studs towards the knee area that would deem to be very, very obviously, that would be a red card. And on one of the angles, the first angle, it does look like that. But then there's a second angle that you see him slip and he just reaches out, doesn't he? Which makes you think, no, it's not a red card. And there's no doubt if he'd given a yellow that there wouldn't have been a red from VAR and the Stockley Park officials. And vice versa, it's a red. They're not going to go the other way and give it a yellow. I think it could have been a yellow in hindsight, on reflection, looking back at it, because of the fact that it was just that one. But also, the way in which he's tackled and the fact the height of the tackle, you're asking for trouble, but he did slip. And I always think when a player slips, they do then sort of react a little bit. And that's what I've got some sympathy with Bruno Fernandes. But the big story for United today was actually they may have come back in the second half, but going down to 10 men, it was awful. Awful.
Well, we've got 3 or 4 minutes for sort of any other business. Quick impression on Liverpool at Wolves last night?
Yeah, I didn't think Liverpool were anywhere near the best, and I think that they're going to have a decent season, it looks like, and maybe get Champions League football. I didn't feel like I was watching title winners, being honest with you, and that they're well below Arsenal and City, but I don't think that's shocking anybody. The thing for me in the game was that Liverpool played in third gear. They really did. And with the mistake that they made for the goal, let Wolves back in it momentarily. It was only 37 seconds, I think, before the penalty was given. But it was a strange game, wasn't it? You were there. It was a strange atmosphere, and I just thought, something? Not to fear that sort of games against the bottom teams are becoming a little bit more predictable, but I really would like to see a team. I accept Wolves are not going to chase the game in the second half. They're not. But get to 10 minutes to go, 7 or 8 minutes to go, and then think about, and I'm not just saying this to Wolves or Gary O'Neill, it can be any club in the Premier League that are near the bottom. Work out how to throw the kitchen sink at them. Kwang, the centre forward that came on, had one touch in the first 21 minutes that he was on the pitch. And the centre backs are still playing it out from the back to the goalkeeper. Plan A, with 10 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go. And I'm seeing it a lot more. And I know that there is this sort of feeling in football now that, when we're not playing well, we've just got to make sure we do plan A better. That's not how my career was as a football player. You'd end up with 3 at the back or 2 at the back, and you'd put your centre halves in the box, and your 2 fullbacks might stay back. Or you might play your 2 fullbacks as wingers, and you might put, your wide players inside, and you end up with 5 up front, and you risk giving away another goal, and you lose 2-0 rather than lose 1-0. But you might win. You might get a draw 1-1, or you might win even if you can get 2 goals in the last minute. And, so many times here, I know that we were a team that, to be fair, were very much, obviously, a good team that played together a lot. But I just think that, change it up, be more adaptable. And I think teams are staying exactly the same to the very end. Now, you can do that if you manage the City. But even City last week against Arsenal, I think John Stones ended up a centre-forward for 5-10 minutes. Good. The keeper comes up and goes up for a goal kick, for a corner. Great. Disrupt. Do something. Take risks. And that's what frustrated me about last night. And there's just this pattern developing through the leagues of the centre-backs playing on the 6-yard box and even doing it when they're 1-0 down with 5-10 minutes to go. And I'm thinking, no, the essence of football surely is to get the ball to your most talented players as much as possible and as quickly as possible. So if your centre-backs are having 40 touches each in a half and your centre-forwards are only touching it 5 times, that's a problem. That's not good play. Can't be. You've got to get the ball. Unless you're 2-0 up and you can then keep the ball on the back all day long, no problem, like Spurs did at times today. But if you're chasing the game or you're at 0-0, you've got to play with an urgency and a way which, what's the quickest way to get it into your forward players' feet or with quality at the earliest opportunity? Now, if it's not on, you recycle it and you play sideways or you play backwards. But if you can get it in there and play it in there, you have to do it. And I'm seeing lots of teams turning down good passes forward because it's as if they've worked on shape in their own defensive half and forgot about the fact they've got to work from the defensive half into the attacking third. And that's happening a lot. And I'm seeing coaches now that are accepting that. And it's something that makes me feel a little uneasy. I'm not a coach. I accept ultimately that I failed as a coach. So there's someone there, sat there watching, they say, Neville, you're never a coach, you were absolutely garbage. But I can commentate on a game of football, and the fact of the matter is, there's got to be something that you give in the last... Because those 20-odd thousand Wolves fans that were in that stadium, they couldn't even muster any enjoyment or excitement in the last 5 minutes, thinking that something might happen. It almost just petered out the game. So it's not a criticism of Gary O'Neill on his own or the Wolves team. It's generally something that I'm seeing generally across football.
Just finally, it's got very tight at the top now because City have failed to win twice in a row, and Arsenal got out of jail. So a sort of final answer on the top 2 contenders.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I think it was good last year. I think it's going to be good this year. I think City know that there's someone creeping up on their shoulder. We knew it when City were chasing us all those years ago, and I was sort of retiring. You knew that they were getting closer every single year with the signings, with their stability and their consistency and their confidence getting better. And there's no doubt that Arsenal are on their shoulder. There's no doubt that Pep Guardiola is smelling and feeling the challenge that he wants. He wants this challenge. He loves to overcome this type of challenge. So they're not going to give in, City. They're not going to make it easy for them. But I like the way in which it's going to pan out. I think we're going to have a really good title race this season. Obviously, not understanding what's going to happen with City's, legal case.
And the story goes on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary. Keep smiling.
Thanks, Peter. I will.